Jesus and his remaining 11 apostles had just finished the Passover meal. It was their last supper together before everything changed. After the Passover meal was complete, Jesus and his disciples left the borrowed room and went to Gethsemane. Now, Gethsemane is an olive grove. You can see it right down here. It's by the Kidron Valley on the lower slopes of the Mount of Olives. It's across the Kidron Valley from the Temple Mount, which you can see up there. Gethsemane means olive press in Hebrew, and it indicates that this was a commercial oil operation. Olive oil in the ancient world was a precious commodity, being used for everything from cooking to cleaning to skincare to lamp fuel. In addition to olive presses, Gethsemane was full of olive trees. Here's that Jesus and his disciples would come to a particular spot, a garden area buried within the olive groves. Jesus would take his closest friends here to rest and pray after long days in the temple complex. But this time it was different. Jesus was overwhelmed with anxiety. The Gospel of Matthew says that he told Peter, James, and John, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." Matthew 26:38. The Garden of Gethsemane, here at the foot of the Mount of Olives, is now protected by the walled grounds of the Church of All Nations, also known as the Church of the Agony. It's a peaceful garden among a grove of ancient olive trees, looking back at the eastern wall of the city of Jerusalem. It's here that the Gospel of Luke says Jesus knelt down and prayed. "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Jesus was in severe distress. Gethsemane, the name of the olive grove itself, even contributes to the agony of the scene. Hebrew gat means press, and shemen means oil. It was as if Jesus' sorrow was so intense that he was being pressed, squeezed, crushed under the weight of a huge olive press. Jesus fully understood everything that was about to transpire. And his prayer, "Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done," was such an important moment in time. Some have said that that was the point that the entire battle was won, the final point of resolve to see his mission through to the end, no turning back. Jesus understood his identity. He understood his destiny. Jesus himself would be the final Passover lamb that was to be slain. Likely bolder now than before he left to pray, Jesus reconvened with his disciples and said this, "See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Matthew 26:45 and 46. As I walk through the Garden of Gethsemane today, it's remarkable to note that this section of trees dates to between 1,500 and 2,000 years ago. See those thick, gnarly trunks? Many scholars believe that these actual trees have been pruned back each year since the time of Jesus. So it's very possible that a few of these trees had a front row seat for what transpired next. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." John 18:2-5. Jesus, now a man fully resolved, faced Judas and the detachment of soldiers head on. He identified himself and willingly gave himself over to them. Following his arrest, Jesus was taken to the former Jewish high priest Annas, who questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in the synagogues and in the temple where all Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said." And when he said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, "Is that how you answer the high priest?" Jesus answered him, "If what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me?" Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. John 18:20-24. It was Caiaphas, the son-in-law of Annas, who had advised the Jews that, quote, "it would be expedient that one man should die for the people." Obviously, Caiaphas had stacked the deck against Jesus. But it was here at the makeshift trial of Jesus before the high priest and the council of the Sanhedrin that Jesus' statement, "I am," caused the greatest uproar. When day came, they led Jesus to the high priest Caiaphas, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes came together in the council of the Sanhedrin. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking testimony against Jesus to put him to death, but they found none. For many bore false witness against him, but their testimony did not agree. And the high priest stood up in their midst and asked Jesus, "Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?" But he remained silent and made no answer. Again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus said, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." And the high priest tore his garments and said, "What further witnesses do we need? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your decision?" And they all condemned him as deserving death. Now, since the Jewish authorities were seeking the death penalty for Jesus, they had to involve the Romans, who maintained the legal authority to inflict capital punishment throughout Judea. The Gospel of John says this: "Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was very early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, 'What accusation do you bring against this man?' They answered him, 'If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you.' Pilate said to them, 'Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law.' The Jews said to him, 'It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death.'" The Gospel of Luke continues with the Jewish religious leaders making some wild and somewhat embellished accusations against Jesus before Pilate. "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. Luke 23:2-7. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. Luke 23:8-11. So picture the scene. Pilate escorts Jesus from the praetorium through this gate and onto the pavement. He sits at the judgment seat right here and presents Jesus before the crowd of Judeans who had gathered there. As we're about to hear, this is where Pilate makes the case to punish and release Jesus. This is also where we are about to hear the crowd's response of crucify him. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I do not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." Luke 23:13 through 16. The Gospel of John then goes on and gives us a detailed account of the personal dialogue between Jesus and Pilate. Here again, we see the epic clash of kingdoms as we catch a glimpse of the struggle between these two very different types of empires. Therefore, Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate answered, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" John 18:33 through 38. Pilate then took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and put a purple robe on him. And they began to come up to him and say, "Hail, King of the Jews," and to give him slaps in the face. Pilate came out again and said to them, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you, so that you may know that I find no guilt in him." Jesus then came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." So when the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, saying, "Crucify, crucify!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and by that law he ought to die, because he made himself out to be the Son of God." John 19:1 through 7. Pilate returned to the praetorium and continued questioning Jesus. Once more, Pilate brought Jesus out before the crowd. He brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation for the Passover. It was about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." So they cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." So he then handed him over to them to be crucified.
So they took charge of Jesus. He went out carrying his cross and came to the place of the skull, as it is called. In Hebrew it is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and they also crucified 2 other men, one on each side, with Jesus between them. Pilate wrote a notice and had it put on the cross. "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews," is what he wrote. Many people read it because the place where Jesus was crucified was not far from the city. The notice was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. The chief priest said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but rather,
This man said, I am the King of the Jews."
What I have written stays written.
After the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, 1 part for each soldier. They also took the robe, which was made of 1 piece of woven cloth without any seams in it. The soldiers said to one another, "Let's not tear it. Let's throw dice to see who will get it." This happened in order to make the scripture come true. They divided my clothes among themselves and gambled for my robe. And this is what the soldiers did. Standing close to Jesus' cross were his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. Jesus saw his mother and the disciple he loved standing there.
He is your son.
Then he said to the disciple,
She is your mother.
From that time, the disciple took her to live in his home. Jesus knew that by now everything had been completed. And in order to make this...
It is finished.
Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. This was done to make the scripture come true. Not one of his bones will be broken. And there is another scripture that says, people will look at him whom they pierced. After this, Joseph, who was from the town of Arimathea, asked Pilate if he could take Jesus' body. Joseph was a follower of Jesus, but in secret because he was afraid of the Jewish authorities. Pilate told him he could have the body, so Joseph went and took it away. Nicodemus, who at first had gone to see Jesus at night, went with Joseph, taking with him about 100 pounds of spices, a mixture of myrrh and aloes. The 2 men took Jesus' body and wrapped it in linen cloths with the spices, according to the Jewish custom of preparing a body for burial. There was a garden in the place where Jesus had been put to death, and in it there was a new tomb where no one had ever been buried. Since it was the day before the Sabbath, and because the tomb was close by, they placed Jesus' body there.